Okay, so the title of this presentation is From the Trenches, Factors that have affected learning analytics success with an institution-wide approach. So at Wollongong University, we're about 2-3 years into this journey, and we've got some interesting insights to share with you. At a glance, we've got about 30,000 students, about a fair proportion are international, so a variety of nationalities, lots of courses and lots of alumni. So given that you might be travelling down under next year, hopefully this slide will entice you, but just a bit about Wollongong. The climate's really nice, fairly small, not far from Sydney, so if you are travelling next year, encourage you to come and visit Wollongong. We've got lots of beaches and lots of bushwalks that you can do as well. Okay, so with learning analytics, it can mean different things to different people. At UOW, we wanted to set the institution on a sustainable pathway with regard to learning analytics. So we wanted to narrow that focus. Given that it can mean different things to different people, what we're about is near real-time delivery of information to both students and teachers. And it's all about supporting the student learning experience. So it's not coming at it from a compliance perspective or anything like that. Okay, so this is the basis of our strategy that we've put in place. I'm not sure if you know the board game Trivial Pursuit, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of the pie from Trivial Pursuit. But the focus of the paper in this presentation is on the academics, the students and the intervention support staff. But the point of this slide is to say that you need to cover all of these aspects when you're coming up with an institution-wide approach, and that it's the academic endeavour rather than the technology that should be driving those initiatives. And its implications, right? So with data comes the responsibility to act, and that's informed a lot of the strategy at UOW as well. When we started, there was little published research regarding the student perspective. So we investigated that early on to inform our strategy, and we did a survey a few years ago. And so we started out with a focus group that was quite diverse, different genders, years of enrolment, faculties, and age. And from that focus group, we then made adjustments to create a survey instrument, and it was put out to cohorts from the 5 faculties at UOW, and it was available online over a 28-day period. We were seeking a sample size of 270, and we got 326 valid responses. So we were confident to a certain degree that the results were reliable. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of those results so that you can then see later on how it's informed what we've done. I'll just go back. There's 3 key parts to that survey. What functionality the students wanted to see, their preferences for interventions, and their perspectives on privacy. So I'll just talk a little bit about those. So with regard to functionality, what was interesting is that we asked them this question about the traffic light system that's quite popular in dashboards in a number of different industries, higher education included. But if you add up the strongly agree and agree categories, only 47% of students thought that would be useful. Other questions that we asked in this category were around whether they would like personalised messages for improvement. 89% either strongly agreed or agreed, which was far better than the result here. And to see progress within a semester against their peers, 84% either agreed or strongly agreed with that. So that was an interesting result. Regarding intervention preferences, the least preferred intervention strategy was from another student in their faculty. And I guess you can read into that what you like. But the most preferred method was personalised email from academic support services. So 84% either agreed or strongly agreed with that. And so I guess some of that points to the apparent anonymity of that outreach. And that was closely followed by contact from an academic from the student's faculty. So 74% either agreed or strongly agreed with that. Okay, privacy. So what this question is asking is whether information gathered in one context can be used in another. And only 39% agreed or strongly agreed, which it indicates resistance to using that information. But another question was asking about whether they felt learning analytics was a big brother type of scenario, and only 17% of respondents either agreed or strongly agreed with that statement. So there's an interesting contrast going on there. And 78% of respondents were willing to have their subject, which is course coordinator, access all of their data to maximise their learning opportunity. So that, again, contrasts with the results that you see on this slide. So yes, there's concerns about how the data is used, but if it's there to support the students, then they seem to be okay with it. Okay, so we wanted to do things for students and teachers. This is just an example of one of the things that we've rolled out. It was in response to the survey results regarding what they wanted to see with regard to functionality. They want to be able to compare against their peers and to see how they're going against learning outcomes. They were the two strongest areas. So we have a visualization within the learning management system. It gathers information that's already available in Moodle, so students can get to this by digging deeper, but it appears at the top of every Moodle site by default in a collapsed view. So all students that are enrolled at UOW will have access to this, potentially. So I'll clarify that in a minute. It's only relevant to that particular Moodle site, so it's for that particular course. As the academic, you will see, it's not in this screenshot, but you will see a drop down of the students, so you can see what the student is seeing. And you can also, as the course coordinator, decide to turn the dashboard off. Okay, and there might be valid scenarios where that's the case. If you've got a particularly sensitive cohort from a non-traditional background, and you're concerned about the potential negative impact of this, you can turn that off. But what we're hoping is that it's going to build a groundswell amongst the students that they will come to expect this. So we have two graphs with it. This one's summarising what's in the gradebook. It's not the original design. We do have the governance aspect with UOW, and I'm not going to go into that now, but suffice to say that the original design, the Ethical Use of Data Advisory Group, which is one of the governance committees at UOW, wasn't happy with, and it was a scatter plot. So it was de-identified, but you could see the spread of the distribution as the student of individual results. So they asked us to go back and redesign it, and we came up with this. The preference would have been to do something aligned with letter grades, but because of the potential variation with how the gradebook can be configured within the learning management system, we went with quartiles, simply to aid with the sense making, so that as a student, if you're in one of the two categories on the left, you're failing that particular assessment item, and vice versa if you're on the right. So the dot indicates what category you as the student fit into. And you can pick from the drop down the different types of assessments, and you can also see an aggregate as well. This is the other aspect to it. So this is over time. So the reference frame for the student is how they're going compared to previously, but also to the average. And so it may tell different stories for different students. You could have the situation of somebody dropping off the pace, even though they've performed successfully in assessments. So it's just a way of trying to unequivocally say this is what's going on in that particular site. So that's something that we've done for the students. We did an internal evaluation, and 76% use it at least weekly, 84% feel that they're easy to understand with regard to the charts, and 63% feel the charts inform them of how they're progressing in their subjects. We do acknowledge that it's not really answering that aspect of the student survey where they want to see comparison to learning outcomes, but there's a whole raft of issues with being able to produce something there. What we were after was something that we could do quickly and easily for the students, given the variety of constraints within the environment. Okay, engaging the academic community. So I'm just going to shift focus now. So what this is all about is a hybrid approach, right? You need top-down and bottom-up. There's not going to be either of those that will work based on our experience. So in terms of top-down, we have executive sponsorship. The Deputy Vice-Chancellor academic, which is the second in charge of the institution, has that shared vision of learning analytics and is able to advocate amongst the relevant people for its purpose and where it fits within the broader university strategy. We have that institution-wide strategy, so what we design is with that in mind to make things scalable. And we also want a consistent experience for both the students and teachers when they're interacting with these artifacts. The governance structures I touched on a bit before, but we do have two different committees. One's about setting the direction, this is what we're going to do in the next time period. But the other committee is about the ethical use of data. And so they can pull in different directions, and we've had some good examples of that. Technology Foundation, a lot of what we've done wouldn't have been possible without the work of the Information Management Unit, who are the custodians of the data warehouse. So you really need that in place across the institution. And policies, that's to assist staff to take reasonable care when processing the data, how to handle ethical issues if and when they arise, but also a framework to try and integrate this into existing teaching and learning processes, which I guess leads into the bottom-up aspects. So we have got this framework in place, but we've started with pilots. The point being is that the amount of insights you can generate from learning analytics is more than you can resource. And so we need to focus those efforts. And we're trying to get a balance with that. What we've found so far is the main benefits are to large first-year courses. As the academic, it's quite hard to know what's going on for each individual student. So we're trying to bring the focus of this is where we think you need to concentrate based on the information we have available. And it's informed by the student survey, right? So, you know, we're hearing that student voice. We're working at that course level, or unit of study level, and you know, it's factored into the timeliness of the reports as well. It being that it's during the session, not once the session's completed. And with regard to communities of practice, it's as the academics and students start to use these things, gathering feedback, getting them to talk to one another, adopting the governance requirements, and just clarifying how to take action, those sorts of things. Okay, so this is a summary of the deliverables we push out, and that's the model that we've gone with here, right? The users don't go into the system, the teachers don't go into the system. For the students, as you saw with the dashboard, that would appear whenever they log into the learning management system. But for the teachers, the academics, we push information out at key points in the session, and that's a deliberate choice. Time is of the essence with a lot of these things. The academics don't necessarily have much time to act on it. But we do ask up front that they place a statement on their Moodle site informing students that the subject's participating in learning analytics. We want to be as transparent as possible. We do have broader policies in place, but we're still, you know, making it as clear as we can to the students that this is happening. And it's also, by getting the academic to do that, it's demonstrating buy-in, right? It's enough to just put your hand up. It's not enough to just put your hand up and say, yeah, sounds good, sounds interesting, count me in. You need to, going back to one of the earlier slides, with data comes responsibility. And so we do ask that they do that to show a commitment. Anyway, as the session moves along, we have a series of reports, and I'll show you some samples of those in a minute. The first half of the session's more focused on the students we think that are struggling, and as the session moves on, it then shifts focus to be more about reflecting on teaching and learning, and that goes back to the purpose of all of this is not just to identify at-risk students, but to continuously improve the teaching and learning at UOW. Okay, so this is one of the key reports. It goes out at the end of week 3. We have a 13-week academic session at UOW. It uses several criteria to identify students in a unit of study who may be encountering challenges. Thanks. And so we rank those results based on the number of criteria that they're hitting. None of this is predictive in nature. It's based on behaviours. It's a bit hard to see. Hasn't logged into Moodle, hasn't logged into SOLS. SOLS is the student information system that the student will use to enrol in units. Hasn't been marked present in class, or if they're enrolled late, if they've failed previous subjects, so they're not making progress within their degree, if they're repeating that unit of study, and if they haven't even enrolled in a tutorial group. So they're the criteria that we come up with, and we send that out at the end of week 3 to try and action it sooner rather than later, so that if a student has no intention of completing that particular unit, they can withdraw without incurring a financial penalty, for example. This is an example of where it then shifts to reflection. So this is just a heat map of the different Moodle activities and which ones students are and aren't engaging with. So as the teacher, if you identify that there's something that you really would like the students to engage with, you can then reach out to the relevant students and say, hey, this assessment's coming up. We know that you need to look at this. How about you do that? Now, this is just part of the story. It may be that the student's accessing that resource just not through the means that record this information in the system, and we acknowledge that, but it's all about trying to use that information within that context. I'll skip over that one, but happy to talk after the presentation about that. The other thing is I wanted to just touch on how we've organised the work around learning analytics at UOW. And the main point of this slide is to say that we're bringing together the learning analytics staff with the student support staff. So one of the things we offer the academics is, okay, we know time is of the essence. You can still decide how to reach out to these students we identify, but if you like, student support staff are on standby to perform that on your behalf. And we get a variety of responses, right, in terms of how that information's acted on. It might be based on the contextual knowledge that they want some of the students flagged, reached out in a certain way, and others in a different way. We use email, phone calls, and SMS with regard to all of that. Okay, so I think that's just covered off what I was saying, but you know, it's all about moving from self-referral to early outreach, okay? If we can reach out to these students before they hit a crisis, then we can help them better. That's the idea. And we still want the academic teaching staff to be the decision makers, but by having the organisation structured in the way that it is, we're able to action some of these insights without them specifically doing that. They can make the decision and we'll go from there. And I should say that the student support advisors are often that triage point, right? So as a student, if you're encountering any sort of problem, you would go to them first, and they might then direct you to another support service, either within the university or within the community. That's about it. So thanks for your time.
Thanks very much. It's good to hear so many people beginning to make contact with the students and seeing what the students are interested in. I've heard that come up several times during LAK'17. So have we got questions?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I missed the information. Did you mention whether the students who participated in the survey and focus groups have already been exposed to the learning analytics or not?
No, they hadn't when we surveyed them back in 2013.
Was there any information provided to explain what learning analytics is?
Yes, yeah, there was there was a reference to another paper So this was run before I started at UOW, but it's got the information in there, and there was an introductory paragraph about what we actually mean by learning analytics, and the questions themselves revealed that.
Move you over, David, only because Stephen's sitting. Just the bloke.
Just interested in the plugin that you developed. Was it easy to do? Were there technical challenges, any pitfalls you could advise us?
Yeah, good question. You know, it would be great to leverage something that was already out there, but in the end we went with developing our own thing, and yeah, there was certainly some challenges there with negotiating with the vendor. There's some functionality that we didn't get that we wanted up front, and we had to compromise on that in order to get the thing live.
Okay.
Yeah, we trialled it first for a few subjects, gathered some feedback, and then did a full rollout.
In your work, have you looked all at how the access to analytics to students affected retention? I'm particularly interested in my work in the potential risk of that data leading to a drop in retention.
So 2 points. I don't know whether that's necessarily appropriate, because the teaching and learning environment is complicated, and to make those sort of grand claims is something that you might expect from a traditional business perspective. What's the return on this investment, that sort of thing. But we've been able to get that buy-in at the executive level that that's not the purpose for this. And so the second point though is that I think this is an open research area, right? So okay, you take actions based on these insights, then what? And I think what you'll see over the next few years is more research in that space as these systems mature.
You mentioned that nothing in your dashboard will be predictive. Is that on the roadmap?
Yes, but not necessarily for the dashboard. So one of the things with an institution-wide approach is you're able to have that consistent experience for the users, but you compromise on the level of insight, right? And so with regard to the data mining and predictive modelling, it would be good moving forward to do something deeper in particular scenarios, whatever that means.
Sorry, as we're not focused on the retention of students on the portal, I guess, do you highlight as well situations where you think students are in the middle, but you could push them through a little bit better, you know, say when you did this, is that information highlighted as well? And also for the upper end students, do you highlight those who do really well, so perhaps you can get messages of encouragement to them as they keep going?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we do have some things in that space targeted at the middle area, and so those that are on the cusp between one grade and another, heading into the final exam. But I think to the other aspect in terms of the high-end performance, it will be great to do some analysis around what patterns of behaviour are associated with that, and then feeding that back to the students, so that, okay, we know that if you want to receive the top mark in this unit of study, these are the milestones that you need to be hitting.
Oh. Sorry, it's going on in the background. Right. We come to an end of questions. Right, we're very nearly there with the next presentation. We're just struggling with the brightness. So I'd like to say thanks again very much to David for telling us about University of Wollongong's experience.